and welcome back to another episode of the Drunken Cryptids. I'm your host, Matthew, and I want to give a special shout out this evening to Gunner. Gunner, thanks for everything you do, man. You're doing a great job over there on the video side of the house. Gunner, we want to make it this far without you, and truly grateful for what you're doing. Tommy, welcome aboard to the wonderful Drunken Cryptids team. I appreciate all the hard work you're putting in to the audio side, man. You're doing great. You're kicking butt. Of course, to Dylan for Blade Media, did a wonderful job for the graphic for us. Dylan, you're a very talented young man, and don't ever quit doing what you're doing. We are going to be at the Arkansas Paranormal Expo this October 26th and 27th. We're going to have a booth set up. We'll have t-shirts, we're going to have stickers. Me and Jacob will probably be wearing kilts. Might even get Tommy into a kilt. And if we're lucky, Gunner may show up into a kilt. But we're going to have the equipment set up, so if you want to pop into the table, say hi, maybe share an encounter with us, we can do an on-the-spot encounter with you. And we're also going to try and, tackle some of the guest speakers and, go ahead and try and interview them as well. But if you've had an encounter and you want to talk about it, email me, drunkencryptids@gmail.com. Follow us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, YouTube, and that's all of them, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's all of them. Yeah, give us a like and a share, you guys. The more you share us, the more you like us, 5-star reviews, everything, the more encounters I'm able to get out for you guys. But tonight's going to be kind of a special night because we finally have new equipment in. So the sound quality should be coming in better. We are sitting outside testing it out. And we're going to do kind of a different kind of an episode for you guys. I got a couple good friends of mine with me tonight. I got Jacob with me.
What's up, guys? How are you guys doing tonight?
And I've got a fan favorite, Rick. Rick, say hi to everybody.
Hey, brother, it's good to be back on your show. Hey, everybody.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. I appreciate you for doing this at last minute. But it's an episode that you and me have been talking about for a while that I wanted to get out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, about the werewolves and everything.
Absolutely.
I know how we trace everything on, through the research where I went through, and it was crazy because the research I started doing on it took me from one cryptid to a totally different cryptid completely.
Yeah, man, I've been really excited to hear all this stuff that you've been going over because, you give me bits and pieces as we're talking back and forth about it, and I've been really excited to hear the show on it. So, yeah, man, let's do this.
Well, you get to be on the show for it.
I know, right? It's great.
That's pretty exciting. I'm excited as hell. I'll tell you that right now. All right, well, let's just go ahead and jump right on into it. So everybody knows the basis of the werewolf. It's where a man turns into, by the light of the moon, full moon, or a woman turns into a wolf-like creature, correct?
Correct.
Right, Rick?
Yep.
Okay, so
Yep.
So everybody knows all this. So we've seen enough Hollywood stories. Enough books. Everything that Hollywood's done, everything is taking place with it. I don't know if you can hear the airplane flying overhead or not. Probably can because, again, I sit right into the path of Little Rock Airport. But I wanted to do some research to figure out exactly where all this legends and lore came into on the werewolf. Because the werewolf has always been fascinating to me as a kid. So I started digging. And, of course, right off the bat, I found that could possibly... It's more likely not a werewolf story, but it needs to be mentioned because it's the first time in written history that talks about a person being transformed into another beast. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, so it's the story of Gilgamesh.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Gilgamesh, being Gilgamesh who he was, the goddess Ishtar, who was the goddess of love, sex, war, and fertility, she was trying to make advances towards Gilgamesh. She was trying to hook up. They were trying to have relations with him, have a relationship with him. Here he is the hero. He's this great guy. But Gilgamesh keeps refusing her offer. To where he finally tells her that she has taken so many lovers and that she always eventually casts them aside for someone new. And then he reminds her of Tammuz. Tammuz. I'm really horrible at pronunciation of some of these words, so work with me. Now, so Tammuz, though, was someone that she absolutely did love, but then she turned into a wolf. He was a shepherd. After she turned him into a wolf, his sheepdogs shredded him.
Okay. It's more of a sheepdog than a wolf?
No. She turned him into a sheep. She turned him to a wolf, and his sheepdog shredded him because sheepdogs protect the sheep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Protect the flock.
Gotcha.
Yeah, to protect the flock. So, thinking of it, that's the first account, though, of somebody being transformed that's written down. And, of course, a lot of scholars, they're going to argue, say that, some will say it's the first werewolf story. Some will say it's not. There's no actual transformation. Some will say it didn't count. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's mythology. It's the stories that have been passed down. It's something in the collective mind of people from way back. It's a basis to build stories on.
Correct. But of course, I mean, if you read any of Gilgamesh, it is absolutely just awesome.
Yeah, Gilgamesh, the man of many names.
Yeah, exactly.
Ishtar, Dionysus, Nimrod in the Bible. Yeah.
Yep, there you go. That's a totally different show, though.
Yeah.
That's a different show. That'd be a fun show to do. I'll tell you that right now.
So back then, there was other man beasts in that time frame, though, right?
There were, yeah. I mean, well, okay, no. This is kind of since we're just kind of following down the werewolf trail. I mean, we could go into so many of Gilgamesh's adventures and man beasts and different creatures and transformations. But I was going after just mainly, I was trying to just stick with werewolves.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So, and to me, I was like, okay, I'm going to pull this. I'm going to actually talk about this story here because it does break down and it does state that this is more like the first werewolf written account. And I'm going to say it's
what's interesting
kind of
to me,
close to
Matt?
that. What's up?
That he's immediately shredded by a sheepdog, right? So, I mean, that would be in the way people would see the world is they had dogs that protected the herd from the wolves, and that's what they did. They shredded sheep, or they shredded wolves. But the idea is that modern day werewolves are immortal, except for Silver Bullet, right? But when he was transformed, he wasn't immortal.
We're actually going to cover the Silver Bullet aspect here in a little bit, though.
Yeah. But the wolf is not immortal.
No, not yet.
In the beginning.
Not
in
yet.
the beginning, he's not immortal. Right.
Not yet, but he turns that way, or she turns that way, however you want to. Okay, so I said that some scholars argue that that's the first one, some argue not. So others believe that the first one, the first werewolf story that came, was from Satyr. We tried to pronounce this earlier, Jacob. What was it we came up?
Satarkin?
Satyri.
Yeah, I got something that will play what the pronunciation will be.
Hang on. Satyricon. All right, there we go. Satyricon. So the first werewolf story came from the Satyricon. It was a work written by the Roman writer Petronius. Okay. Now he was a scribe at the court of the Emperor Nero.
Okay.
Now, I don't like Nero. Nero was probably one of the worst of the worst, I think, that the Romans had. Right? And like many of the writings of the time, it is a humorous discussion of philosophy in alternating prose and verse. The work was written around AD 61, but wasn't actually published until 1664. Now, how crazy is that? Yeah, so it was written in AD 61, but it wasn't published for, 1,000, almost 1,600 years later.
Yeah.
So I wonder. But what strikes me on that one, though, that's real close to the time frame. I think it's either 100 years before, or somewhere in there, to where the wolf over there in France.
Oh, the Beast of Gévaudan?
Yes, the Beast of Gévaudan. The Beast of Gévaudan was a wolf creature that went through in France and shredded people, and it was either in the 1700s or was it the late 1600s. I can't remember exactly.
No, it was in the 1700s. It's like 1730s.
Okay, so this came out, roughly 50 to 100 years prior to, so this is published. And I'm wondering if, since, the world was, all over there in, medieval Europe, wondering if that was the story here was possibly it. But, all right, so this is a collection of stories that follows the travels and tales of two friends. Okay? You're going to like this, Rick.
Yeah.
Encelopius and Gita. All right? But it also contains the story of Nicaros. Now, he was a soldier that traveled to a distant city with an acquaintance. While on their way, they stopped at a graveyard to relieve themselves. Why would they stop at a graveyard to do this? I have no idea, but even I know that that's probably not a good idea. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. So now the poor Necros whore, right? His companion then laughs wickedly, makes a circle of urine around himself, rips off his clothes, then transforms into a wolf, howls, and runs off towards the nearby town, leaving a very stunned Nikaros behind.
Yeah, I'd say he's stunned.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. If you'd have done
You
that
don't
to
see
us while
that
we were,
every day.
yeah, if you'd have done that to me in the army, dude, I think I'd have sit there going like, WTF?
Especially if your
Right.
friend just ripped off his clothing and just turned into a wolf, it'd be like, oh man.
Well, I've had soldiers actually sometimes, rip their that's because they were,
I
a
mean, that's
little
different.
hammered in the
But at the
barracks.
same time, you see your friend just turn into a wolf after ripping clothes off. It's
But I want to know, so what was the motivation behind stopping in a graveyard, urinating to relieve yourselves in a graveyard, and then he urinates in a circle around himself, takes his clothes off, and runs off?
Uh, well, lunacy. It's just crazy, man. I don't.
yeah.
I mean, I think that's the point. He lost his humanity, and I don't know.
That's a good one. I like that, lost his humanity. Well, check this out. Ready? So Necros then goes over to his buddy's clothes, only to discover that they had been turned into stone.
That's weird.
It's the Romans, man. It's the Romans. I mean, come on, the Romans. I mean, we're
Yeah.
no.
My biggest question was his clothes inside the circle of pee.
It doesn't say. It just says he just ripped his clothes off and they were turned into stone. And
Because that's very weird for most werewolf folklore. I mean,
but now you know what though? It doesn't end right there for the poor Necros. Right, there's more. And Jacob, there's more to this. There really is. Okay. So now Necros decides to walk to town, scared to death. Right? He's attacking every shadow with a sword. He's thinking that his buddy's about to jump out as a wolf. Okay. When he gets to the town, he's told by a woman that a horrifying wolf killed off a handful of farm animals, but then was speared in the throat by a servant, putting an end to the wolf man.
Wow.
does it say anything about it if he ever turned back in?
No, it just says that they speared him in the throat, and that was the end of him. The guy was done. Over. History. Vaya con Dios. Hasta luego.
So
No more wolf man.
So they actually describe him as a wolf.
As a wolf man, yes.
Like a wolf man.
Yep.
So,
But now, but here's the cool thing though. There's some underlying kind of means behind the story. If you think about it, okay, ready? You should not urinate in a graveyard. Okay, that's an insult to the dead. It could cause some supernatural punishment. You know what I mean?
First of all, that's just rude.
But the funny part about it, so remember though, is it so when these stories were written, this is when Nero was in charge. Okay.
Yeah.
Most of the writings during Nero's time were all humorous and crazy and kind of funny stories.
Yeah.
Because you got to look at Nero, knowing the history of Nero, which we could probably do a whole episode on Nero. The history of Nero, though, looking back at all that, it makes sense that they would have stories like this and to entertain and amuse Nero.
Right.
Kind of crazy, huh?
Yeah, try to please.
I mean, somebody getting smited with divine retribution for urinating in a graveyard and basically tormented by turning him into an animal, and then eventually getting speared in the throat. I think Nero would definitely get a giggle out of that one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can see it. It's a work of fiction, kind of.
It could be, but it ties on in. So it is a story, but it kind of ties in. So now we're only talking about Rome, though. There's some other ancient stuff we're going to come into place at, right?
Okay.
All right. Let's talk about the Greeks for a minute. Because the Greeks, they had their own stuff. They had their own crazy everything.
Oh yeah.
Those
crazy Greeks.
The Greek king Lycaon. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is where we get the term, lichens and stuff like that from. So if you pay attention, like the werewolf movies and stories, they call them lichens, lycopathy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it all ties back into. And so let me tell you the story real quick because I want to break the story down with you guys. Okay, ready? Now it says that King Lycaon and all his sons were struck down by lightning bolts. All right? Or else it was his sons who were killed while Lycaon fled the palace and was transformed to a wolf by Zeus. Okay?
Wow.
All right. hence the belief that Lycoan was the first werewolf. Now, what led up to these things was this, okay? The werewolf myth became integrated with local history of Arcadia. It's a region of Greece. Zeus was worshipped as Lycaean Zeus, i.e., Wolf Zeus, in 380 BC. Greek philosopher Plato told the story in the Republic about the protector turned tyrant of the shrine of Lycaean Zeus. In this short passage, the character Socrates remarks, the story goes that he who tastes of the one bit of human entrails minced up with those of other victims is inevitably transformed into a wolf.
Whoa, this sounds like the Native American myths
Don't spoil the ending. Don't spoil the ending. Don't spoil the
Okay,
ending.
okay.
Don't spoil the ending.
All right, all right.
I won't have you back on for these again. Don't spoil the ending. No, but
Okay.
now
No,
remember,
I'm just following the trail, man.
Okay, now remember, this was written in 380 BC.
Yeah. So essentially, cannibalism is leading to.
But there's more to the story, though. There's more to the story about this. Okay, so you remember what Socrates said. The story goes that he who tastes of the one bit of human entrails minced up with those of other victims is inevitably, I can't even pronounce that word, is going to be transformed into a wolf. Okay? We're gonna kind of hold on to the Greek for a minute, because now Ovid, a Roman poet, writes about Lycoan's story. So not only do the Greeks talk about this, but the Romans talk about this as well. See how we're getting now two different cultures here. Okay?
Yeah.
Ovid, okay, he contains, his story contains all the elements of a modern werewolf tale: immoral behavior, murder, and cannibalism.
Right.
Now, Ovid's passage is one of the only ancient sources that goes into detail on the act of the transformation. His description of the metamorphosis uses haunting language that creates a correlation between Lycoan's behavior and the physical manipulation of his body. Okay? Okay, so this is what happened to King Lycoan. So King Lycoan had a really good kingdom going on, right? He had his subjects were happy, everything was going great, and he had numerous sons. Well, he found out that Zeus was, Zeus always liked to show on up and be in a mortal disguise. Okay?
Yeah.
So Zeus shows up, checking his kingdom out in disguise. King Lycoan hears about it, and he decides he's going to throw a feast for Zeus. But he's going to test Zeus. And the way he's going to test Zeus is he murders his youngest son and serves him to Zeus. Zeus takes a bite, realizes what it is, gets completely angry and upset, murders all of his other sons by lightning bolts, and then transforms King Lycoan into a wolf, and then resurrects the son who was murdered, and he then takes over the kingdom, and the kingdom prospers even further under his son. And King Lycoan was cast out as a wolf.
Wow. Okay.
Kind of crazy, huh? So again, remember, written in 380 BC. You're kind of spoiling some of the ending already. So
Yeah.
But what Ovid described, though, is the first actual description of somebody transforming into a werewolf. And this is what he wrote. He tried to speak, but his voice broke into an echoing howl. His ravening soul infected his jaws. His murderous longings were turned on the cattle. He still was possessed by bloodlust. His garments were changed to a shaggy coat, and his arms into legs. He was now transformed into a wolf. That's the first description of a person transforming into a wolf.
Wow. All right.
Okay, now Ovid's Lycoan is the origin of the modern werewolf. It sounds familiar, like everything that we see in Hollywood, okay? Think about it. His murderous longings, they turn the cattle or people. He was possessed by bloodlust. His garments were changed into a shaggy coat, and his arms and legs, so he turned into like a four-legged creature, right?
Yes.
All right, so Ovid's description is actually is now like the modern day manipulation, right? The body hinges, immoral behavior, all that good stuff. Okay? Lycoma's character defects are also physically grafted onto his body, manipulating his human form until he becomes that which his behavior suggests. And perhaps most importantly, Lycoma begins the idea that to transform into a werewolf, you must first be a monster.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
I mean, the guy killed his own son, so
Right.
he was the monster.
He was. He was the monster. Yep. So being the monster, so when he was transformed, he became the wolf.
Hmm.
So hold that thought, because that's going to play into further along with us.
Okay.
Okay. Now you asked this earlier though. Okay. Now there's a whole bunch of stories, of transformed beasts that are all in mythology. Okay. Some have basis in local histories, religions, and cults. In 425 BC, Greek historian Herodias described the Nuru, a nomadic tribe of magical men who changed into wolf shapes for several days of the year. The Nuru were from Scythia, Scythia, a land that is now part of Russia.
Scythia.
Yes, Scythia. So we're going to get into, actually, so believe it or not, so there's, which I'm going to come back to the Russian thing, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to that. But you think about this, though. So there's too many mythologies, too much going on from too many. So every culture so far has a wolf transformation story in it.
Yes.
Okay, so we're tracking that. All right, cool. Just like almost every ancient culture also has a flood story in it.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about Egypt for a minute. Lycopolis. Lykopolis. Sound familiar? Lycoma and Lycopolis. It's all tying on into the same key word there. Lyco.
Yeah.
Okay, this was Now the Egyptian translation for this is something like Zadi, Zawty, Zadi, right? And this was an important city located on the western bank of the Nile. It was the capital of the 13th nome of Upper Egypt, about 3100 BC. So now we've gone even further back before the Romans, obviously. Okay.
Yep.
All right. The primary deities of the city were Anubis and Wepawet. And these are both wolf-headed gods. Now, this is where everybody's going to argue with me at. And I got into a debate with somebody the other day about this. Everybody says Anubis is a jackal-headed god. Okay? He's not. We didn't believe that there was wolves in that region. Okay?
Okay.
At that time frame. There were golden wolves. These golden wolves have been found in various excavated chambers throughout the city of Zawdy, through the ruins. And there's a little bit left of it survives to this day. But looking at so they're automatically going to assume that it has a dog head that's going to be a jackal, which is the most primary, canine at the time that we were thinking of in our modern. I'm using my fingers in parentheses, modern archaeology. And that's where history's got it wrong. So now they're finding out that there was actually wolves there. They were golden wolves. They've been found mummified through various chambers. So Anubis is actually a wolf-headed god.
That makes sense. I mean, the wolves would be very connected to death.
Mm-hmm.
They slaughter your livestock. They can kill your family. They would be one of the apex predators in the region. I mean, it makes sense that the god of death would be associated with the wolf.
Yep. So now we know that Anubis is actually a wolf-headed god. Okay. Now the city of Zawdy, though, now you're gonna like this though. This makes me laugh. The city of Zawdy has a very fun story behind it. Okay. And it's told by a Greek historian, Diodorus. Why can't they have normal names like Bob or Jim or John or Sally?
I don't know. Is that time of freaking
Diodorus.
Diodorus.
It's Diodorus.
I mean, and if you're in Arkansas,
I don't know why girls won't go out with me because your name is Diodorus.
I like that.
Yeah.
No wonder why he was a historian. Nothing to my historians out there. But
Yeah.
Diodorus, in the first century BC, right, that an army of Nubians invaded from the south. But they were repelled by packs of wolves. These wolves drove the army from the southern borders of Lycopolis and then back beyond the borders of Egypt. According to Diodorus, this is why Lycopolis was called the city of the wolf and revered wolves and wolf deities so greatly because they were dog people.
So could they have just been trained wolves,
Okay,
trained
so
dogs?
well, okay, so war dogs are absolutely, and you and I both know this one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dogs are
Absolutely.
vicious. Okay, but these are
Right,
actual
havoc.
wolves. So what this is, so what is described here though is this was a city of dogmen.
Dogmen. I've
The
actually
reason,
heard this
yes,
before.
yes. So this was an Egyptian city of godmen who worshipped Anubis, Lycopolis, everything. And I mean, the city's in ruins now. There's not much of it left. I mean, they're finding all this stuff. It was called this. Lycopolis was called the city of the wolf. They revered wolves and wolf deities. I mean, deities. I mean, that's what they did.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there is, yeah. So now we have an actual historical account written in of an actual location that does exist. They found mummified remains of wolves. So now,
Yeah. I mean,
so now we're bringing it
I,
on
I,
in here. But I'm also gonna,
I,
but because I can bring Nephilim and stuff into the story if I want to as well. I'm trying to stay away from the Nephilim, by the way. But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I really, really want to, really, really bad. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay, so everybody just okay. Now here's the cool thing though, right? And I just told you this, right? About how they were referred to Anubis as a jackal-headed god. Very popular calling Anubis a jackal god. We now know that the animals in question were in fact not jackals, they were indeed wolves. Scientists for a long time asserted that they, for some reason, knew things better than the ancient Egyptians and Greeks who actually lived during that time period. I just said that,
Right,
modern archaeologists. That's where they try and rewrite some of the history, I believe. Okay?
right.
All right. Let's see here. Going through my notes real quick that we've already pretty much covered.
I think that's becoming a popular consensus is that they're, either trying to rewrite history or they're just trying to fill in history as best they can with basically estimated guesses.
No, I agree. I 100% agree. I really do. I mean, because if you think about it, history is only really known for the past 100 to 150 years.
Right.
200 years ago is just what we have to go off of what somebody wrote down.
Yeah.
300 years
Um,
ago, we have to go off of what somebody else said to somebody else that was written. You see what I'm saying?
yeah, and academia, what they hate more than anything else is to say we don't know, right?
Yep.
They have to have an answer. So an educated guess is better than not being able to say anything.
Exactly. Absolutely exactly. So what do you think so far?
I think it's going very well.
No, I mean, no.
I'm
So what's your
really
thoughts?
intrigued by everything that's happening. I was waiting for the dogman to come up. I was really
We're on
like,
the
oh, dude,
dogman
that's.
right now, actually. That's the
I
funny
know,
part.
I know.
So
It's
the whole werewolf thing started leading into the dogman thing, which is where we're at.
right,
And Rick and Jacob, what gets me on this one is that, so, I told you I was going to get back to Russia, right?
right.
Okay, so trying to trace down, it was kind of hard. And I'm probably not the best researcher in the world, to be honest with you. I'm just an old dumb grunt, right? But what I was finding out is that there's some Turkish folklore that ties into, and they kind of hold a different kind of light on the werewolf legends. And this is where you're just going to really get your attention on this one now. Okay, ready?
All right.
Common Turkic folklore holds a different reverent light to the werewolf legends. In the Turkic Central Asia, shamans, after performing long and arduous rites, would voluntarily be able to transform into the humanoid Kurdidam, literally meaning wolfman. What does that sound like to you?
Sounds like they figured out a way to to change themselves. Yeah, skinwalkers.
Skinwalkers.
Absolutely. That's what I was alluding to earlier. You're like, don't ruin it.
Don't
Yeah.
ruin it.
Absolutely.
That's
The
what I was
Native
trying to take.
American skinwalkers.
Check this.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this was I find fascinating because I was trying to tie in. Okay, because you go through history, the land bridge, how the Americans came over here from the land bridge between Russia and Alaska up north, right?
Maybe.
You get the point I'm trying. I know. Yes.
Yeah. I got
Okay.
you.
All right. So I was trying to trace these roots down, and this is where I found, about the Kurdidown. And what blows my mind too, though, is that so if you look at medieval Europe and if you go through the history on what they were trying, for them to turn into a werewolf, other than the classic Hollywood of being bit by a werewolf, right?
Right.
Okay, is there's a ceremony you would have to go through that involved wolfsbane, it involved actually a wolf's pelt, it involved a full moon, it involved cannibalism. Sound familiar?
Yeah. Now you go through the whole ceremony, the whole ritual.
Yes, same
of
thing
becoming.
in Turkey, same thing in the Southwest.
Right.
The Native American Southwest, and they're all connected. And what was fascinating to me though is that how can all these cultures with no contact with each other have the same ceremony, the same thought process, the same ideals of turning into a wolf?
I mean, a lot of them before the destruction of the Library of Alexandria would have had ancient documents from the Egyptian era that they would have been able to read. The ones on the other side in the Turkish areas, they were doing Zoroastrianism and Hinduism. Basically, their religion was very inundated with spiritual beings. Try not to get off on the Nephilim. Thing.
Well, we are going to actually discuss the Nephilim here in a little bit, though. I just wanted to wait a little bit on the Nephilim, right? Because I don't want to get ahead. I don't want to get ahead yet because I got some more knowledge. Once I get some more knowledge out there, then we're going to sit down and kind of discuss. I think my ideas, your ideas, Jacob's ideas of where all that's coming in place at. Okay.
Right.
So now I've traced.
But a lot of those stories.
Yeah, but
base back into spiritual.
It does.
Right?
I have. So far, I've traced from one part of the world over to this part of the world of the same cultures. Now, you're going to love this one, okay?
Yeah.
Marco Polo talks about dog-headed men living out on the Andaman Islands to the west of Thailand. Discovers this. Marco Polo, in his travels, in his writings, goes into great description of this island. It's still there, the Andaman Islands, and they were dog-headed people.
Wow.
Yes. It gets even crazier. Saint Christopher was a dog man.
Wait.
Yes. Saint Christopher was a dog man. Saint Christopher was a dog-headed man, right? And he came from Marmorthia, Syria. He came down out of the city, and he was going to go and do what dogmen do, which is terrorize and shred people on up, until he heard the teachings of Jesus. When he heard the teaching of Jesus, he decided to become a follower of Jesus. In the process of becoming a follower of Jesus, as he was baptized, God transformed him into a man.
Wow. Okay, that's an interesting take on it.
Yeah. If you look into the history of St. Christopher, you will see that he was a dog man. And of course, there's going to be a lot of debate. You're going to have, in Catholicism, they're going to say no. You know what I mean? But it's
I don't know why they would say no. I mean, this seems like almost like a demonic transformation after being baptized. I mean, I would think that the Christians would just jump on that too.
Oh, since we're talking about the Nephilim, you ready for this one?
Shoot.
Okay, so Book of Enoch.
Okay.
The giants know that God's going to wipe out the world. They've heard about this. And they go to Enoch. And they go to Enoch to say, hey, what can you do to help us out? Now, we already know the giants are the offspring of the Nephilim. They're the Nephilim, right?
Right.
And Enoch even said that God was willing to forgive and bless them as well. So the story of St. Christopher ties on into this.
Mm.
You repent your ways, is what the giants were told. And some were actually spared and saved. We know David and Goliath, right?
So no.
Ah,
The only ones to survive was Noah, his three sons, and their wives.
not accurate. There's more to the Genesis thing. But actually, believe it or not, I'm actually doing an episode with a guy, a minister coming on sometime in the next couple of weeks, and that's what we're going to dig into. But not everything was wiped out and slaughtered, and it's mentioned in there. And we can talk about that later because we'd be in an hour debate trying to pull up a book, and I know you and me. Well, actually, we'd be in
Right.
2 hours. All
Right.
So, but not. I mean, there were other survivors in the flood because again, you got to remember, every culture in the world has a what?
Flood story.
A flood story. Every
Flood
culture
story.
has
Right.
somebody who survived. Every culture has
Well,
this.
I believe it's the same somebody that survived.
No, they
So-
have their hero. They have their person who survived. I mean, it's even written in Mesopotamia. I mean, it's written down the flood, and I could go.
Sure.
The flood. Yeah, the flood could be a whole other different topic. Let's try to get
All right.
trying to get back to this thing down here. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So, but Saint Christopher was a dog man. Marco Polo does find an island full of dog-headed people. Now, the first dogman account that we have, because now we're off of skinwalkers, now we're on dogmen. The first dogman story that we have is actually out of Michigan, and it's in the year 1887, in Wexford County, Michigan. 2 lumberjacks saw a creature with a man's head and a dog body. Totally different from what we've normally heard about the dogman, right?
Completely reversed.
Now, the story is it only appears to humans in a 10-year cycle that falls on years ending in 7.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, so 1887, 1897, 1907, you know what I mean? 1917. So they're not due for another dogman encounter up there for about another 3 years. But this is huge. I mean, the dogman phenomenon.
So
up
it's
there
still
in
happening
Michigan is
today.
huge. Yeah.
Like, well,
Yep.
not today, but it's still happening every 10 years
Mhm.
now.
They're still seeing signs of dogman.
Okay.
All right.
Wow.
So what gets me about this? So the question I was having is, I'll get to skinwalkers here in a minute, but the dogman, because the dogman phenomenon is huge right now. Dogman sightings are almost leading Bigfoot sightings out there in the cryptid world.
Yeah, nobody talks about it though.
I mean, if there's more eyewitness accounts coming out now of dogmen than there are Bigfoot. Dogman is actually more and more popular. So if there was a popularity contest right now, dogman would almost be beating Bigfoot.
Wow.
So my theory on it is, with the dogman phenomenon taking place across the country, is it because of our manifest destiny that we're expanding everywhere that we want to do and moving to the woodlands and the places where they inhabit and hide out at? Are they a product of the Nephilim still to survive through everything? Which I think so. Were they an actual culture or civilization of beings that survived? And because of their appearances and everything, were they hunted down to where now they resorted back into almost like you take a person and throw them out in the woods, and everybody out in the woods they resort backwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like feral, going
Exactly.
feral.
Thank you. That's
Like
what I
you
was
get a
looking for.
hog and it's domesticated. It looks completely like a pig, everything. You put him out in the wild after a week, he's a boar. He's all hairy, huge tusks. I mean, he just goes feral.
So what if that's what's taking place right now, though? That's been taking place for hundreds and possibly thousands of years with the dogman. There's too much written history describing werewolves, dogmen, skinwalkers, and I'll be honest with you, I think skinwalkers are only in one localized area, and that's going to be down in the American Southwest. Because no other tribe really has those. I mean, of course, you've got the Wendigo, and I can talk about that. But when it comes to the skinwalker phenomenon, not every Native American has it. So if somebody tells me, yeah, we saw a skinwalker in upstate New York, I'm probably going to have a hard time believing that.
I mean,
Now, if
that's
you and me
always
are,
kind
now
of
if you and me,
associated with the Wendigo with the Skinwalkers because
well, see, my
they're
opinion on the Wendigo, I think the Wendigo is actually it's a made up story.
really.
Yes. So the Wendigo to me is this because the Wendigo is only mainly through the legends go through from like Kansas, Nebraska, all the way up in through the central part of the Midwest, which is the Midwest all the way up into Canada.
Mainly like the Oregon Trail style.
Well, the Oregon,
Like,
well,
yeah.
no, so they go straight through up. It doesn't go out west. The Wendigo doesn't. The Wendigo only appears in the harshest of winters, and it only appears through cannibalism. So I look at the Wendigo as a story the Native Americans would tell why you shouldn't like eat your own people. Because it only happens in the harshest winters when food is scarce, when you're struggling with cabin fever. You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? So that's why I think the Wendigo. So I don't think there's any real basis to the Wendigo. The Skinwalker, yes, I'm going to go 100%. The Skinwalker is real. I'm going to go 100%. Same thing with the werewolf is real, and the dogman is real. But Wendigo, no, no. I think it was. If you research into it, look into the history of it, it falls more in lines with, you know, I call it the tooth fairy. Now,
Okay.
somebody's
I
had
mean,
now somebody's had a Wendigo encounter. I want to hear about it. You know,
absolutely.
I mean, by all means, I want to hear about it. I just know that because my mind can always be changed. I'm not an expert. My theory is that's all it is. It's a story told around the campfire. Oh, a couple winters ago, the so and so tribe, they had a Wendigo. And a couple winters ago, it was like negative 30 degrees, which they didn't really know at the time. But they were, harsh winter and they were starving. And so, Bob ate Joe and he turned into a Wendigo. So don't turn to the Wendigo.
So I mean, okay. So I still think that's a possibility, but if you're a tribe of peoples and somebody turns into a Wendigo, you're probably going to know it's Bob, right? It's like Bob turned into the Wendigo,
Yep.
right?
Bob
So
turned into the Wendigo.
I can see where it's like, yeah, if the stories were validated by
I mean,
like, hey,
like the Donner
we
Party.
found 3 people dead and one person like there's no more, he just dipped out. It looks like he became a Wendigo. Then you
Bob.
could link Bob, yeah, you link Bob to the Wendigo and say, yeah, this is absolutely a credible story because we know that this person
Well, okay. Also
lost his mind.
falls back onto the King like Cohen. You have to be a monster first to turn into a monster.
Right? Yeah,
So if you're going to commit cannibalism, you're automatically a monster.
absolutely. But I guess, yeah. I mean, you can be driven to be a monster.
Well, yes. Well, yeah, that's true too. But you asked another question earlier. We'll get back to this in a second. I want to get this one out of the way. Silver.
Oh yeah, silver.
You want to know why silver was selected?
Because it's a pure metal.
It's antibacterial properties.
Ah, okay.
The only creature silver can hold back. So here's a cool thing about silver. So silver does kill. Silver, all right. Silver was used to kill cryptids during the Middle Ages due to its antibacterial properties. Silver is also believed to be the only way to kill a skinwalker or silver chains to bind them.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's pretty interesting. Why antibacterial? I mean, why?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but yeah, silver is the material itself. The metal itself is antibacterial.
I mean, my dial soap is antibacterial. I don't know if I could like fashion it into like a prison house shiv or something like that. You know what I mean? It's just a weird dynamic. That the antibacteria.
Well, think about it though. So they use stainless steel, but now for surgical steel.
Right.
But what they used before in surgeries? Silver.
Right.
Because it was easier to heal from. Because
Yeah.
again, because silver has a lot of antibacterial properties to it, and that's why silver was selected or thought to be able to kill werewolves and other cryptids and keep them at bay because they were tainted and bacterial and blood and goes back to the bloodline of Nephilim and stuff like that. I could go on and on and on. Look, we tied Nephilim into the story. That's great. I think that's hilarious. But no, I
Yeah.
don't. But so the skinwalker phenomena was, obviously out west. I don't think they're any further. Those tribes are out there, and they don't share their ceremony. We know some of the ceremony of how to become a skinwalker, which is very
Right.
similar to, the Middle Ages of Europe on how to become a werewolf. Have to go through it. Then of course we have the Turks, going through this. It's a shaman. It's somebody specialized, and
Yeah.
they decide to become this being. And I believe it's still in practice. To where the dogman, the skinwalkers, and the werewolf, they're all pretty much related in some form, but I also believe that the dogman itself may be its own separate entity, away from the werewolf and away from the skinwalkers. I think the dogman is its own being. It's its own actual creature, whether it's part of the woo or physical, but there's too many weird stories and encounters of the dogman
Right.
that just makes you want to pause and go, "Whoa!"
So let's think about this from a different perspective, right? So like we were talking about Gilgamesh earlier.
Yeah.
Like I said, he's a man of many names, and in the Bible he's known as Nimrod, right?
Right.
So in the Bible it says that Nimrod began to become Nephilim, right? And that began is like begat. It has a sexual connotation to it, but it's like a defilement connotation to it. So Nimrod, in some sort of defilement, began to become Nephilim. So if he figured out a way to change his body, he may have been the original one, and he was at the Tower of Babel when all the world was dispersed. They left there speaking about Gilgamesh, Isis, Diana, all these names, and they would have had the knowledge of how to defile themselves into changing their bodies. So when mankind spread out all over the world, you've got these people in Scythia, which is like Indus Valley region, right? They're over there. They're direct descendant back to those who were scattered at the Tower of Babel, all over the world. It's all the same. So that defilement is passed down to shaman kind of thing, or to holy man, or medicine man to medicine man, and these men have a way to defile themselves to become werewolves or skinwalkers. Yeah, I mean,
Well, see, when you tie that in too, though, that ties into my theory. In all honesty, is to where, one, you're correct, because I believe that not everything was wiped out in the flood. I believe they hid. I believe they knew it was coming. And they hid out all over the world, and resurfaced all over the world. And it's where the
so
the
you
tainted
think
blood.
this is
I still think that
pre-Diluvian?
yes, I believe that there is still tainted bloodlines running around out there right now. See, we're getting so I think there's tainted bloodlines of the Nephilim.
I believe there's tainted bloodlines of the Nephilim out there. I believe that it was. They did survive the flood. They survived in the blood of the wives of the sons. Their DNA carried at some point the Nephilim gene across.
See, okay, Noah and his family weren't selected because they weren't without sin. They were selected because they were pure. Their blood was pure.
No. Noah was selected because he was pure, and his wife was the daughter of Enoch, so she was probably pure. But the three daughters, or the daughter-in-laws, they were married only a week before the ark set sail. They were definitely selected just before.
And they were brought onto the ark.
They were brought onto the ark, and they have genetic material in them that carried over. That's why you get the story of Canaan on the ark, where Noah curses Canaan, and you see all the line of the Nephilim. We're getting off on the Nephilim, man.
Yeah, I know.
We're getting off on the Nephilim.
I know. We keep going back over there. We're trying to get back over to the dogman.
Get back to the dogmen. Yes. So that's where I believe that the magic, quote unquote magic, is really a ritualistic ceremony that men who have that knowledge can transform themselves the same way the skinwalkers do, right? That's where I think it kind of comes from. But you're saying the same thing. You're saying that it's an ancient ritual.
So my thing is, so with werewolves and with skinwalkers, yes, it's a ritual. Dogmen's its own separate thing. This is an actual, there's male and female dog people, and they make little dog people. To where there is an actual, like there's a male rabbit and a female rabbit, and they make other rabbits. I think the dogman is in itself its own separate creature, like Bigfoot is.
So
where I think there's a world of difference. I think all three of them get put in the same melting pot. But you have the werewolf, which is one, the dogman, which is separate, and then the skinwalker, which is separate. Now, the skinwalker and the werewolf, those two are very similar related. Similar ceremonies, similar this. And I do believe that, same thing with the Native American culture, the skinwalkers, there are still groups of werewolves out there that roam. Where these,
but the dogmen, the dogmen are gone?
No, the dogmen are still, no, they're still here. That's why we're having so many dogmen. Okay. So if you look at, some of the descriptions you're going to get of the dogman versus a werewolf. All right. Craziest story. Now, I've talked about this before on Cryptids of Corn. So I had so you know how soldiers are. We sit out in the field, we BS about women and beer and supernatural and paranormal and scary stories.
Right. Aliens, all the good stuff.
Everything. I had to drag the story out of this kid. He would not tell the story. And he was like, yes, Harn, I got this really creepy story. And, we kind of like forced him to tell the story. And you can tell when somebody's telling a story whether they're filling you full of crap or whether,
Sure.
All right. This kid's story, and I'm going to paraphrase it because this was 22 plus years ago when I heard the story. God, it's been that long, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, you're old.
It's not the years, it's the miles.
That's right.
But his story was, he was adopted into, he was an orphan. He got adopted in, and he was an Asian kid in Ohio. And his grandparents had a farm. He loved going out the farm, and he was going to stay hanging out at the grandparents' farm with his cousin. They were going to have a good time. And they got on the four-wheeler, and they were going to run through the woods, at dusk, which any, kids are going to do, right?
Yeah.
And he said, we always go out there because the cattle like to wander the woods, and that's where they die at. So, as being kids, that's always fun to go check out.
Sure.
Boys are weird, let's just be honest. So, they're running through the woods, and they are, on the four-wheeler. His cousin's driving, he's sitting behind him, and they come across the first dead cow, and he said it looked like it had been gutted and just ripped open. Not like a normal death would be. The cow was gutted. Right. It was a disaster. He said then they started noticing claw marks on he started noticing claw marks on the trees. And he said about that time they hit a spot where they were going to turn around at. And they were in the woods. It was dusk. It was night, so it was darker in the woods than it was out. We know this. And they had the headlight, the headlight on the four-wheelers as they're turning into a left circle. The headlight catches this tall wolf creature whose eye was red until the headlight hit it, and it was a side profile of it, and so only could see the one eye. The eye was red until the headlight hit it. When the headlight hit it, it went from red to black. The opposite of eye shine, like it absorbed the light, and it turned its head towards them. And that's when his cousin gunned it out of there.
Oh, yeah.
And smart. And he said he was gripping his cousin tight. He didn't look behind him, but he just knew it was like right behind him. Like any kid would feel like, Oh, it's right behind me, it's right behind me, right behind me. They get out of the woods. They're hauling towards the farmhouse. They get to the farmhouse and jump off the four-wheeler. They run inside. They run upstairs. They turn the bedroom light on, and they go, no, it'll see us. They turn the bedroom light off. They're looking out the window, and out of the woods comes a man. Stares at the farmhouse for a minute, turns and walks right back into the woods again. Not a wolf.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, when he told me the story, I stared at him like, are you kidding me? The kid almost had, when people relive like real scary stories, they get like the goosebumps, and they get like little tears in their eyes. All the way through.
And he thought it was a good idea to join the infantry and live out in the woods.
He sure did. I don't know why he decided
bless
to
his
join
heart. Bless his heart.
Let's go join the infantry and live in the woods. I'll be honest, if I had that encounter, you would never catch me in the woods again.
Oh, no.
I would, no, that would never be in the woods again.
Well, he is with 100 of his most heavily armed friends. So
yeah, who are all probably, all of us are 18 to 25 years old and completely inexperienced at anything.
yeah.
That's why they should draft us at our age. You know that, Rick? Because at our age, I think we'd be better soldiers now than we were 20 plus years ago.
Probably.
I mean, do you know how cranky I am in the mornings? I don't have my coffee. What I would do to people without my coffee?
Oh, bro. Yeah. And nicotine.
Yeah.
I know how you are without nicotine.
Yeah, so if I can't have my cigarette and my morning coffee, I mean, I will go on a rampage. There would be nobody left. They'd be like, hey, son, they took your cigarettes and your coffee. I'll be right back. Korea. Hey, coffee sergeant. I mean, oh, gosh. And we could do an episode just on that. But, no, so that's what I fully believe, though, that the Dogman phenomenon is its own entity, the werewolf thing, because that was the first time I'd actually heard of any kind of werewolf story. Of a transformation thing,
out of other than Hollywood.
Exactly.
Right?
And I was like, okay, this kid couldn't make it on up. He got into more detail about it. The eyes were teared. He had the goosebumps. And I'll be honest, Rick. I mean, you know me. I'm the biggest skeptic and believer there is.
Right.
And this kid, I was convinced that they witnessed a werewolf.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've had the same experiences in the military like that. Not the werewolf thing, but I know a guy that said he was watching TV in his trailer home, and he looks over at the window, and there's a Bigfoot head in the window. And he's, screams, run to get his shotgun. He runs outside, and it's gone. But when he was looking at it, he's like, this is a trailer home, so it's like 4 feet off the ground to start.
Yep.
And then the window's another 6 feet up. He's like, to see its head in the window, that thing had to be huge.
It was funny, though. There are so many accounts of that, though.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've heard those stories in the Army. The stories are out there.
Yes.
It doesn't discount, if it's true or not, but it's something to be considered, just like anything else. The people that we're talking to were trustworthy individuals, not just blowing smoke.
Well, no, but again, too, I mean, Joes are going to tell stories just to be Joes. This chick was awesome. No, dude, you went home alone.
Right, but when it comes to like, hey man, this really happened to me, bro. That really happened to him.
Yes,
that's a thing.
Okay, it's like your episode that you did talk about what's at Grandma's house.
Right.
Yeah, looking through the window. I want you to know that I think Jacob. That
gave me goosebumps going the way to work at freaking 5:30 in the morning. Dude, I have my earbuds in. I'm headed down the Pine Bluff for work. It's dark out, and first thing you said, your buddy's on the front porch knocking on the door, and all of a sudden you said, I wouldn't do that, or no. And all of a sudden you said you looked at the window and it was like pitch black, and all of a sudden something moved. And now you can see through the house, and it's like, oh God.
Yeah,
something was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still want to go check that house out. But Rick. So I'm just going to kind of give you my hypothesis real quick, and as we get ready closer wrapping up the show. But I really believe, so I'll go back to it again. The werewolf phenomenon it's a real phenomenon. It's not. I think that maybe Dogman and werewolves kind of get their identities kind of mixed. Skinwalkers, absolutely 100%. I'm going to go the Skinwalker thing all day long. I will. I firmly believe that the Skinwalkers are out there. But again, too, I believe that they're out west. So if somebody tells me they ran into a Skinwalker in upstate New York, I'm going to laugh at them. It's not going to be a Skinwalker. It's going to be, either a dogman or it's going to be a werewolf.
Yeah.
You know, in all honesty, I'm going to firmly believe that. I believe that the reason why we're getting more dogman sightings now is maybe because the population is coming back.
That's a good possibility.
Okay, it's like,
yeah.
i.e., like a protected species. You know what I mean? It's hit out long
Well,
enough to where it's been able to breed. You know.
People are moving out of the rural areas into urban areas.
Yes.
Right. So now you're having more open land.
Yes, and also people are moving in, believe it or not, and we're encroaching into the rural areas by expanding into our subdivisions.
True.
Right.
And you're down to disturb all that up, and you're down to start seeing more sightings. Because
by doing this, I mean, to be honest with you, so I had to actually stop the research because I was getting into fairies, I was getting into the fae folk, I was getting into, there was so much that was tying in to these, and it was just the werewolf that I was going after, and I knew that there was a correlation between the werewolf and the skinwalkers. And I was really just trying to nail that one down. And then the dogman thing kept popping up, you know, with Marco Polo's account. And, you know, over there in Lycopolis, you know, in ancient Egypt, you know, that's a city that was full of dogmen. You know, and when I say dogman, I'm being gender neutral here, you know.
Right.
So,
of course.
Yeah. But that's a city full of them. And it's where, I mean, it's a written account of how these soldiers, these dogman soldiers, repelled the Nubians.
Right.
You know, this isn't like, you know, saying, hey, you know, some badass infantry guy showed on up one day and just slaughtered them all. No. When these historians, remember, they didn't have TV. They didn't have, you know what I mean, pictures. They couldn't, like, take a picture like we can now. So they had to go into
the body of a man.
Yes.
Head of a wolf.
Yes.
Yeah, you got to go off the basic descriptions.
And that's what they describe. They don't describe people dressed up in armor.
Right.
They describe people as creature-like. And we do got to get ready to wrap this on up because people are starting to light off fireworks. It is still the 4th of July weekend. Did you have a good 4th of July?
I did have a great 4th of July, man. I really enjoyed myself. I was spending time with the family. But I just want to say, man, I believe this stuff is real. But what is real, man, we're just going to have to keep looking, right? Because the story is out there. We just don't have a clear picture. But it's definitely, to some degree, a real phenomenon, right?
No, I agree 100%. It's out there. And, I mean, in all honesty, all my years in the military, you were my supernatural buddy. I mean, if something crazy and weird was going to happen, it happened to us.
Why? I didn't want it to.
I mean, I've had a few supernatural things.
That's not my niche, man. I would.
Well,
I don't.
Funny,
you know.
I have an ex. You know, because I'm a diehard Steeler fan, right?
Right.
And she used to say to everybody all the time, she was like, you can't hang out with Matthew long enough without becoming a Steeler fan. I think you can't hang out with Matthew long enough without having some kind of supernatural paranormal experience.
Seeing something.
I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, me and Jacob got an EVP together doing
at the lodge.
At the Elks Lodge here in North Little Rock, and we got it narrowed down. We got it narrowed down finally. So, Tommy, the producer, he's finally separated it, and I can't hear what it says. Was you able to play it or no? We just got it today, so we haven't had a chance to listen to it at all.
No, I haven't got to hear it.
But I mean, yeah, it's absolutely crazy. But hey, Rick, I do want to say thanks, brother, for coming on, man. Thanks for coming on.
As always, man, I loved it, bro. Man, this thing it's exciting. It's a lot of fun, and it's always great to talk to you, man.
No, that's great. We got more to do. What you got?
Yeah, I mean, one thing how you said about the Bigfoot peering in the windows.
Yeah.
My aunt had one peering in her window.
What? See, now we're in Dogman and Bigfoots.
No, because it made me think about when he said that.
Really?
Yeah.
I want to hear more about this.
Peeking in, like hands covering the face, peeking in, just like.
There were so many stories. I'll be honest. Okay, so first off, I mean, I like to think of myself as pretty. Yes, there's a lot more science showing up in Oklahoma about Bigfoot right now. And I think that's why that one guy that moved where he moved to, that we can't mention his name yet because we have to wait for a couple of weeks.
Wait.
I think that's why he relocated there.
Yeah.
They got out of the area because I think there's some kind of migration.
There could
thing,
be a possibility.
and I think that Oklahoma may be part of that. I really, really do. I mean, there's so much to it. In all honesty, I have to check. Just have to check that message out real quick. Don't tell me what it says, but just kind of read it. I kind of really get the details on that one.
I will.
But Rick, man, brother, I'm glad you came on. Thank you very much for helping me do this. I was excited to do this, and I didn't know if I was have to make it a 2-part series or not, and I don't. I think I got it pretty much covered. Hopefully, we got some people, a little bit of history in there on some of where these wolf creatures come from. But yeah, it's out there, and their origins. I mean, you and me. Well, we've talked offline so many nights, in person and on the phone about this stuff. I mean, hours, Rick. I mean, there's no way that we could ever put in everything that we talked about into an episode.
No, not at all. And I hope everybody really enjoys this episode. I had a lot of fun making it. And you know what? Me and Matt, we don't always agree on everything, but that's okay because, you know what? We're trying to get to the truth. That's what we really want. We're curious and we want to know the truth. So we bounce ideas off each other. We get with each other and, we want to get to the bottom of things. Get to the truth of it.
Rick,
and I love doing that with you, brother.
Rick, if we agreed on everything, we'd be boring.
It would be boring. It would be so boring.
I mean, if somebody was so Casey audience, I think we mentioned it before. We took a road trip a couple years ago, and we went to, I got a kick out of Roswell. Rick didn't care for
it. Dude, Tombstone was great.
Was amazing.
It was great.
It was amazing. Have we talked about the Tombstone experience on the air yet, or no?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think we might have mentioned it in passing.
I think we might have mentioned passing. Okay, so you know what, Rick? We'll knock out that. We're going to end it. We're going to end the episode away from Dogman and everything, and we're going to tell the night of Tombstone and the morning of Tombstone. So it's the night and the morning. Okay?
So the bar crawl through Tombstone at 10 o'clock at night when nobody else is there but bartenders is great. I highly recommend it.
Yes.
The bartenders are awesome. They tell you a lot about the history, and you go from bar to bar, and it's like, hey, that guy died there, and Wyatt Earp shot that guy over there, and, this and that. So it's great to hear all the stories, but when you sit down at a bar stool and you see the refrigerator moving, little small desktop refrigerator kind of jiggle, and you ask the bartender, like, hey, did you do that? And she says, I don't want to talk about it. I have to close up by myself. And she leaves the room. Yeah, that was something right there. Well, it was like, okay.
So there's a picture, I have to find it again, of me and Rick, and we're pointing to this bottle behind us on the refrigerator. And we're like, we just watch it shake. We're the only, so the bar, it was a long bar. We're in the middle of it. There's people all the way at one end, people all the way at the other end. So we're talking to her about it. And so she comes back, and so Rick goes, so this place is haunted. And she goes, oh, yeah. She goes, I was closing up one night and just said it out there. All right, I'm leaving. And the voice came from the basement and said, hey, I'm down here. And she went, nope. And got right the hell out of there.
So if you remember, it wasn't the basement. It was a mine shaft.
Yeah. Well,
so in the middle of the bar was a mine shaft, and that voice came out of the mine shaft.
That's right. Yep.
Dude, it was
like
super
a museum
creepy
down there.
Dude,
yeah.
I just got to look at it. How long you got to work there just to be used to that?
Every person that night, I will never forget. So we had, what was it? It was the place across from the Oriental. It was the busiest place we went into.
Right.
And they were actually all dressed up as saloon girls.
Yeah.
And they were saying that White Up's office was upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't.
That place was kind of narrow. It's a little bit like Four Quarters, right? It's a little narrow.
Yeah. But the one girl though, she was right there talking, and me and her were talking. The one saloon girl. And so Rick said, so is this place haunted? And I let her go, well, is it haunted? And the look she gave us both, and she goes, yes, I'm not in here after closing. I'm not closing here by myself. And then she politely excused herself and walked away.
Dude, I forgot about that.
Remember?
Yeah. I do remember that.
Remember, she was a cute little girl. And we were just talking.
Well, I'm sure you remember that.
We're just trying to get the history out. And,
right.
And I remember, so I looked at her, so is it haunted? And she goes, yeah. And that's when she said, I will not close by myself. I'm not in here at all after closing. I refuse to do anything at all with being in here. So me and Rick are like, oh, wow. So then we go down to, I think, Doc Holliday's place, was nothing there, had something. And then we decided we were going to walk the footsteps from the Oriental to the OK Corral. We're going to follow White Up. We're going to follow White Up's footsteps. Mm-hmm. Now, everything's shut down at this point in time.
Yeah.
So we have Tombstone to ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's me and Rick in Tombstone by ourselves. As
a little 2 sheets to the wind.
Yes,
we're still vertical.
We weren't that bad.
We're still vertical. We're not leaning.
Well,
but
what was it you said?
I don't know about you. I was feeling pretty good, man.
Yeah,
I was feeling pretty good.
What was it you said in the first episode? Well, it is the Drunken Cryptids.
It is the Drunken Cryptid. So me
and Rick we're doing the footsteps, and Rick's now seeing people running.
Right. It is the bank. So what I saw was an arm, the side, and a leg, kind of like a mist, but it was clearly like the shape of a body, and it was running along the bank. And when it got to the front of the bank, it turned and went in front and just disappeared.
Yeah, see, I didn't see that.
No, you didn't see it.
So I didn't see the first one. The second one, when he grabbed me and goes, there! And something darted and it went down that one alley. It was right before you turn right to go to the OK Corral.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see the first one, and then there's the second. I just caught a glimpse of the second one. Yeah, I got the goosebumps again. Like, see the goosebumps. Jake will tell you I get the goosebumps coming in. So we do the footsteps. We're thinking this is cooler than all it can get. So that morning, we're all excited. To where we were thinking about skipping Flagstaff on our trip and going from Tombstone straight up to Winslow and then over to Albuquerque, so the night in Albuquerque. You get one more night in. At Tombstone, because we had so much fun. The history, we're just amazed. That morning, it was like Disneyland for the movie Tombstone.
Yeah,
it was horrible. The tourists
it got really touristy.
There was nothing, and we went and ate breakfast. Remember, and we were like, and we were gonna go do a mine, but the C word was still in place, so you had to wear masks everywhere. We didn't want to go in the mine wearing masks, and so we said, let's go check out the Birdcage Theater.
Oh man, I can't wait to
go
about all this.
The Birdcage Theater is the only original building still left there. Like the Oriental, where everything takes place in the movie, it's been transformed into like it was a pharmacy, then a family restaurant. It caught on fire.
So the building is still the same.
Yeah, the building's still the same. But inside's gutted.
Just been refurbished.
It's been gutted. Yeah.
So like the guy told us, he said, "Hey, listen," he goes, "The bar wasn't here. The bar was actually over there." So for these scenes, for the stories, so it was all opposite of what we were looking at. And so we're like, okay, cool. But the best part though that night though was that everybody was super friendly about everything though. They weren't looking like a bunch of tourists in here. No, they're like super friendly. Vogelman's, which where we ate at, that was the fun place. That was the bowling alley.
Dude. Yeah, and it was good. It was good food.
Oh, good food. And then what was cool though, since it used to be the bowling alley, he had turned the bar into like a bowling alley lane. Where you set the bar at. It was like a bowling with the little arrows guiding you down. Yeah, it was really cool. So we decided we're going to go to the Birdcage. So, you go in there. We had to pay like $10 or something like that, I think, to walk around. And the whole, there's a couple bullet holes in the wall when you walk in. And then you go behind back there where everybody was seated at. And you see the bird cages up on top where everybody was seated at in the movie. And they have like, artifacts and a whole bunch of stuff from, the Wild West in there. And me and Rick are kind of wandering around, and I'm kind of bored at this point in time. Like, just wasted $10 to walk around the Birdcage Theater to say we were in here. And Rick was behind me, and I was walking up the stage because, in the movie, the stage where they perform at. And behind the stage, you would go downstairs. And in the basement, they had a museum to all the prostitutes that were in Tombstone.
Yeah.
So we walk up the stairs, and as we walk up, as soon as I get to the top, I feel on my right shoulder a nice, gentle caress of a hand going over my right shoulder, and I stopped.
He said it like that. Oh, it's a nice, gentle caress. This dude jumped out of his skin. And he jumped back and turned and looked at me and goes, something touched me. I was like, wasn't me, dude. I'm like, way over here. Hands to myself. If
somebody touched me like that, I'd be jumping out of my skin, too.
Right?
Not no gentle, crisp touch. No, I'll be like, who's behind me?
I felt like the guy from the Ghost Runner show. Did you just touch me?
No, do you want me to? Where we going to this?
Do it again.
Man, Rick, that was, so that's our Tombstone experience, everybody. Tell you guys what, Rick, thanks for coming on, brother. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
All right, guys. Hey, thank you guys for listening into another episode of the Drunken Cryptids. Please like and share the episode. Leave us some comments, 5-star reviews. Love to hear from you. Again, if you've had an encounter, please reach out at Drunken Cryptids. Excuse me, I got tongue tied there. drunkencryptids@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. Not on Instagram yet. iHeartRadio, Spotify, all of them. Thank you again for listening in. Y'all stay safe out there.
Anything that I